Hello students, welcome to this module of Literary Theory. The title of this unit is Postcolonial Studies and the name of the module is Edward Said, The Scope of Orientalism. I am Dr. Susan Deborah, Department of English, Assistant Professor, MES College of Arts and Commerce, Zuarinagar, Goa. Now the outline of this module is as follows. You will be introduced to Edward Said and Orientalism, and we will be reading Edward Said's The Scope of Orientalism. After going through this module, you will be able to gain insight into the theory of Orientalism and you will understand the underpinnings of race and representation. Now first let us look at an introduction of Edward Said. Edward Said is commonly attributed as the father and founder of postcolonial studies, and he was a professor at Columbia University and a very vivacious public intellectual. He was a political activist and a literary critic. His most popular book, Orientalism, was published in 1978, and this book, from the time it was written until the present day, is a very influential book and a book which is mostly found in the canon of postcolonial studies. Now let us briefly look at what is Orientalism. Now, Orientalism is a way of seeing things that imagines, emphasizes, exaggerates, and distorts differences of Arab peoples, not only Arab peoples, but all the people of the East, mostly from Asian cultures, as compared to the US and the European countries. Now, Orientalism is an European construction of the East. Now, how the people of the West saw the people of the East, they saw them as primitive, savage, pagan, underdeveloped and pagan. And what all was not present in the West was there in the East, and that was seen as something abnormal, something uncivilized, and something which was not very savory. So that is Orientalism. So what happened was, the idea that the East needed reform, development and civilization, and this the Europeans thought by colonizing the East they would be able to do all these things, because they saw all the peoples and all the places of the East as highly underdeveloped, savage. They did not have the etiquette and manners that the people in the Western world had. Their food systems were completely a brute force. So they thought by civilizing these places, they would be able to try and reform these places. So that is Orientalism. It is the way the Europeans saw the peoples of the East. Now let us look at some of the key ideas in this particular chapter, The Scope of Orientalism by Edward Said. So now this particular chapter is the first part of Said's path-breaking volume Orientalism. And in this particular chapter, what he does is he tries to establish the link between knowledge and power. The knowledge of the East in the eyes of the West gave them the power to change what they saw. Because what they saw in the East was that they were different. There was a difference like self and the other, ours and theirs. So our civilization is the best, whereas theirs needed reform, needed to be civilized. And that is why as soon as the Europeans landed in India and certain other places, the first thing they tried to do was convert the people from whatever the religion they followed in their place to Christianity. So that was seen as one major form of civilizing the people of the East. So this was not just a geographical division. So Said says it's much more than that, because the term East, the term Orient is loaded with a lot of things which is not very positive when seen from the eye of the people from the European civilization. So what happens here is, the West has a self-proclaimed superiority, and that superiority is shown in every aspect of their dealings with the East. And this was not only the people who were part of governments, this was also observed in the Western scholars. Because the Western scholars seem to think that their understanding of the East is much better than the understanding of the Eastern peoples themselves. So it means that they try to represent the East as they saw them, not for what they were. So, which means if my eyes are yellow and I try to see something, my sight will also be yellowed, which is not the case because my sight is yellowed, whereas the people there, their sights are not yellowed. So, what happens here is when the people from the West try to look at people from the East, that is, people belonging to India, Africa, and other places, they try to project what is seen through their sight. And that is always very demeaning, very derogatory. And since most of these colonies were not Christian colonies, they tried to see them that they were worshipping pagan gods and they worshipped idols and there were a lot of demons and a lot of things like that. So this is the idea that is created by the West about the East. And Said was trying to bring this out in this book, Orientalism. So what happens is Orientalizing the East and subjecting them to Western standards. Now, if there are some practices of the East which were not in line with the Western practices, the Westerners try to put that down. It's right from the language to the identity to the food habits and every other aspect of culture. So what we call Indian culture or probably African culture in the present day context is quite far removed from that which was existing previously before the colonists set foot in our countries. So all accounts of the Orient, according to Edward Said, were prone to generalizations and attributing collective significance to acts of individuals. Now it's like just taking a sample size of something and saying that everyone is pagan, everyone is barbaric, and not trying to understand the essence and ethos behind following a specific cultural trait. Just because it was very different from the Western culture, the Western people tend to see these practices as something which was not normal. So what happens is the West tried and employed its own terminology to define and analyze the Orient. But these things were not known to the Easterners, right? So slowly, the West started trying and developing all these concepts of the Orient for the Western eyes, by the Western eyes. So which means that the people who are there behind, who have not visited the East, have already a picture of the East because the Western eye has given them an idea. So even many foreigners, even to this day, when they probably try to come to India, they think that India is a land of snakes, elephants, and fakirs. Almost as if, there are snakes and people moving on elephants all over India, which is not the case. And so the Orient could be seen as a mirror for the West, who wanted to see themselves as superior. So Said says that the Western world had this Freudian mechanism of projection, which means that this Europe projected everything it didn't want to acknowledge about itself into the Orient. I mean, that includes a lot of sexual fantasies as well. So the things that it was latent in them, when they see it there, they tried to project it onto the East, saying that the East is like this, which means that it is their own projections which are coming across from their representation of the East. So this is what Edward Said talks about in the scope of Orientalism. I referred some of my material from these references. If you would like to go through them, you are welcome to. Thank you.